So I am in the mayor's office, and through the grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we have a partnership with our community college and our school district to try to double the number of low-income youth who get a post-secondary credential. And for us, that has taken on a number of forms. I think we've spent the last few days actually talking about, how do we look at the loss points where our students are falling out of our various systems and start to focus our energies around reversing those trends. And so I think over the past year, we've really looked at the transition from high school to college and how do we invest in programming that helps students understand their options better, increase the enrollment and the sort of post-secondary going, and layer supports around that. Increasingly now we're transitioning from transitions into then retention and remediation issues. So once we sort of increase the pipeline of students who are making the successful transition, how do we have them be successful when they get there? And so, I think there's different roles we all play in that. The mayor's office plays a role around working with our workforce partners and our business community, funding some of the programmatic elements that we do with our after-school providers, and then the college and the K-12 system a lot on the actual content that we're working with the students.
And Laura, you must hear a lot of data that you gather from students themselves. What are you hearing are the challenges that community college students are facing?
Well, the challenges, there are access challenges for students because our enrollment process is a 5-step enrollment process, and so community colleges are open access, so a lot of people think, oh, they can just get in. So what's happening at our high schools typically is the students are not getting the support that they need through the 5-step matriculation process because the schools are spending some of their energy on getting the students into the 4-year, which is great, but what happens to the other students? So Kimberly was talking about the loss points. So what we're trying to do is through this transition work is we're trying to make sure that we help the students who have a desire to go to community college, and for those that a community college is more affordable also, but also the students that don't go anywhere. And there's about 500 of those students in San Francisco, and how do we capture them and how do we convince them that community college is actually a viable option for them? So that's sort of one piece, is that the data is showing us is that we're looking at all these drop-off points. How do we work on the access piece? And then once we get them in the door, so we have access and retention issues through the 5 steps. So they complete an application, but a lot of them, what happens next? Do we get them to the next step of taking that placement test and so on? So we really have been working on that in year 1, and so now our added challenge is how do we get them to stay through that, persist and stay through that first year, and how can we increase the passage rates? And in particular, this grant focuses on African American and Latino students in particular, because in San Francisco and at City College, we know that those are the groups that are falling below the equity gap. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on getting them in and then keeping them. Some of the work that we've done through data is also the pilot. We've piloted a process whereby students from San Francisco Unified School District get priority registration, where previously, there's all these different groups that get different levels of registration dates, and so they were at the bottom of the list. So we've moved them to the top of the list. And so we tried this last year with about 400 students, and we saw that their persistence rates, once you give them an earlier registration date, they actually get access to the math and English courses that they need. And so we saw that they persisted and they stayed, and the retention rate was 98% of them actually came back, stayed, and then their passage rates were 75% in math and 80-something% in English, and they were accessing those critical courses that's going to actually help them persist and stay and complete on time. And we know that that's the #1 indicator, is that they have to complete on time. So these are sort of the policy issues that we're working on. We have a lot more work to do, but we're a good team, so we're really eager and anxious to get to now the retention piece.
It was almost a radical policy change that you were able to push through this partnership. What other things are waiting in the wings for policy change that you would like to see in the coming year or so?
I think there's, we're sort of crossing the hurdles as we hit them. Another change that the college just made was to enable students to retake the placement test within a few weeks of taking it the first time. One of the things we were finding was that students don't always understand what the placement test is and how it will impact their entire college trajectory. And either don't take it seriously or don't sort of study for it or get prepared for it, and then all of a sudden they're facing 6 classes of remediation in a sequence before they can get to college level. And so while we're doing some outreach to help students understand that through SFUSD and others, being able to retake it when they have an idea of what it's about, and they get the gravity of what has happened when they get their placement results, we hope will make a big difference on the remediation issue just as an immediate one. We've also been doing some work with the Unified School District around some early warning indicators that our data partners have looked at, and how do we start to identify the students much earlier who are off track. And so changing, it's sort of policy, but probably more practice change, where all of our high school principals will get the list of the students who are identified through those indicators coming in at 9th grade starting this year. And then working with our community partners to say those students are the ones who will get priority, not for enrollment in this case, but priority for working with our community partners for access to some of the services that we have in the schools, so that we can try to get more students through the high school system on track, so that by the time they get to the community college, it won't be whether they took the placement test seriously or not, because they'll be ready to go. So I think those are the kinds of things we're trying to look at and understand, is where are things getting tripped up, where can we use our knowledge to better target what we have, and then where can we design handoffs and improvements in the process where we're seeing that our own practices or policies aren't working the way we'd like.
Yeah, this summer we are working with Beyond 12, a local nonprofit organization, and they are running our Summer Bridge program. So there's about 175 students who participated through this activity FRISCO Day, where we helped students through the 5-step matriculation process, and those students are now engaged in a summer program that just started last week. It's a 6-week summer program on campus, and they're learning how to connect with the resources, and they're doing the same thing. They took the placement test already. They're going to be involved in intensified work around math skills and English skills. They're going to take the placement test at the end of the summer, and so we'll see the difference in terms of where they place. Hopefully there is a difference. And so that work has been really great, because we're really engaging our partners. They've learned a lot about the college system itself and the bureaucracy connected to it, and they're amazed at how much students have to maneuver it too. So that's been a lesson learned for them. And then so we're going to continue to engage with Beyond 12, because they want to stay connected with this group of students, and they want to conduct research following them and do some qualitative analysis around what happens to this group in particular. We helped about 1,200 students through the matriculation process, through the Bridge to Success work, and then so we've got this subsection of 175 students. So we're going to see, how much of an impact did this summer program make with them, and then the other larger group will be sort of a control group, so we can do some comparative analysis to see what a difference it does make to run a summer program, because they are pricey. So it'll be interesting to see, the difference between the two groups.
Mm-hmm. I think we're in the early stages of our engagement with our business partners. A lot of the work that we're looking towards and building towards are some of our career-linked pathways. Our Economic and Workforce Development Department has identified 7 sectors that are the highest growth sectors for jobs in San Francisco. And they have launched, in partnership with the business community, sector academies in a couple of those sectors. What we're finding is that those academies are not connected to the high school academies, and are not always, in some cases they are, but in many cases they're not articulated to the 4 years. And so that's where we see our business partners really being able to have a voice of, even reflecting on the session we just had this morning here, on, how do you create competency-based standards? How do you understand and unpack that pathway for a student? And using the business community as that creative tension to sort of push the education systems to move in that direction. So there's the communities where we have the most traction. Healthcare is a huge one in San Francisco, and that's probably our business community who's the most engaged. But as we look towards some of the other growth industries around technology and the like, we'd like to start to increase the engagement of those communities as well.
I think one of our challenges is, we're engaged in this work heavily, but how do we make it sustainable? And we're really going to try and tackle that this year because it's an area of concern because we put all this effort and all of us are involved, and it's like when the money goes away, what happens? So how do we actually institutionalize this work? How do we make these policies board resolutions so that they stay long after we're gone? Or, we want to make sure that this all sticks, and in the end, the biggest challenge is we want to see the needle move in terms of the data. We want to see that the equity gap is minimizing, and is a 3-year program, a 3-year funded program, the answer to that? I don't know, but at least we want to see the data changing for the benefit of everybody in San Francisco and for the community and more importantly for the actual students. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge that everybody involved in this work has ahead of them.
Yeah, and I think related to that, the biggest risk for us is we're being very public about what we're trying to do. Yeah. And these pieces don't move at the same rate. So, you can get a summer bridge program up and running right away. To retool the retention programs or to create that alignment between what's being taught in high school and what's being taught in college could take 5 years. You get faculty talking together, they're starting to get underneath those competencies and content standards. You have to build trust, you have to get, kind of through a process, then you have to redesign curriculum, and So we're gonna have students that we've opened the floodgates for getting priority enrollment, getting through summer bridge, kind of being taken through all of this, who are gonna arrive when the system might not have caught up with some of the changes that we think are necessary for them to stay and succeed. And we feel like we're working on them. But if there's too much of a mismatch, then students show up, they don't make it, the data doesn't move, we don't get the chance to kind of continue the work that we're doing because people say, hey, you're a failure. What happened? And so being able to tell that story, which is going to be a complicated story, being able to support the students as best we can with the resources we have now, continuing to do the disruptive work, kind of behind the scenes that might take time, and then having it all come back together in a way that people can be excited about, understand, be supportive of, and then be willing to invest in and sustain locally. We have 3 years to try to figure it, and 2 now, right? To try to figure all of that out. So I think we have the right people working on it. I think we do have a really strong partnership, and we're excited about that. But we lose some sleep over this too.
Yeah.